All right, guys. So the funding and trade wars by President Trump has only just begun. Yesterday, President Trump announced that he'll be cutting funding to South Africa because terrible things are happening in South Africa. So this was his tweet. South Africa is confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly. It is a bad situation that the radical left media doesn't want to so much as mention. A massive human rights violation at a minimum is happening for all to see. The United States will stand for it. We will act. Also, I will be cutting off all future funding to South Africa until a full investigation of this situation has been completed. Now, this is because of something called the expropriation bill, which was signed by Cyril Ramaphosa I think it was in 2024, 2025. Yeah. So expropriation basically means dispossessing people of land and then giving it to another set of people. So what is happening in South Africa is that the South African government is repossessing land, right? Or how would I put it? They are repossessing lands for minority whites and giving it to the blacks without compensation. I think the problem has to do with compensation. But the thing is that the minority whites were able to get this land because of apartheid. So what happened was that when the minority whites came to South Africa to colonize South Africa, they took this land forcefully from the indigenous South Africans. So what the South African government is basically trying to do is called reparations. They're trying to take the land from the minority whites who don't originally own it and giving it to the blacks. I don't see anything wrong with it, but I'm going somewhere because I'm about to discuss negotiation from a place of strength, right? Because it's not all countries that can take this kind of thing, and I will explain myself. Anyways, I saw a video where the South African president reacted to Donald Trump, and I'd like you guys to watch it.
This issue that Donald Trump fears so much, we offer this question of the land. I don't know what Donald Trump has to do with South African land because he's never been here. And he must keep his America, we will keep our South Africa. That is what he must do. South Africa is our land. South Africa belongs to all the people who live here in South Africa.
So I really don't know if this video is a recent or an old video, but I saw this tweet by Cyril Ramaphosa last night, and it reads, South Africa is a constitutional democracy that is deeply rooted in the rule of law, justice and equality. The South African government has not confiscated any land. The recently adopted Expropriation Act is not a confiscation instrument, but a constitutionally mandated legal process that ensures public access to land in an equitable and just manner as guided by the Constitution. South Africa, like the United States of America and other countries, has always had expropriation laws that balance the need for public usage and the protection of rights of property owners. We look forward to engaging with the Trump administration over our land reform policy and issues of bilateral interest. We are certain that out of those engagements, we will share a blah, blah. Let's not go into that. He just ends with the US remains a key strategic political and trade partner for South Africa, blah, blah, blah. But basically, this is the South African president sucking up, in quotes, to Donald Trump because he doesn't need to explain himself. I mean, there is sovereignty. Every country has its own sovereignty. I don't need to explain myself as the president of a country to you about the things happening in my country. But because South Africa is in a position of weakness and has not been able to finish itself into a position of strength and power, that is why he has to explain. China won't do this. I'm even going far. Paul Kagame won't do this. The president of Rwanda, he won't do this. He won't even reply you. He doesn't care. And come to think of Paul Kagame, I want you guys to watch this video of Paul Kagame talking about how beggarly African nations are.
Why do you put yourself in a situation where you deserve somebody to have a sympathy for you? Why? Somebody to have a sympathy for you? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you for somebody to come from, 5,000 miles to come and have a sympathy for you and babysit you?
So my question to African leaders is this. What do you guys expect from Donald Trump? What do you guys expect? This is a man who, in his first term as president, did almost everything he said. He has been saying the same thing over and over again. I'm going to cut the expenditure of the government. The government is spending too much money outside of America. America first. We're going to keep the money within the confines of America. We are not going to give the money out. So every opportunity that Donald Trump has to cut excess funding, he will cut, even though he has to use expropriation as an excuse to do it. So what did African leaders expect? What did you guys expect to happen? South Africa is in a weak position now where it has to negotiate. Like I said, Rwanda won't do this. The president of Rwanda wouldn't even do this. Paul Kagame won't. China will do this. In fact, China has actually hit back the US because of the tariff that the 25% tariff that the US placed on China. China has in turn retaliated with a 15% tariff of its own. That is what happens when a country can negotiate from a position of strength. You don't have to explain yourself to Donald Trump, but because you collect aid, that is the problem. The problem with Africa is aid. We continue to collect aid. African leaders continue to collect aid. South Africa is rich in mineral resources. How come South Africa is still waiting on the US to collect aid? That's the problem of Africa. And so because South Africa is not in a position of strength, then nothing can happen. You can't even negotiate well. I'm sure Paul Kagame would have said, Donald Trump can go to blazing. He really doesn't care because Rwanda is in a position of strength. In fact, that is one thing that I admire Paul Kagame for. He has been able to take control of Rwanda in such a way that Rwanda has become like a power. It's a powerhouse of its own. Paul Kagame really allows foreign interference in his government. Although he has a tendency to be a dictator, but the truth about it is that Africa needs very strong hand at this point to rule Africa and to bring the result that Africa needs. You don't need a consensus. You need a man who is ready to do what needs to be done. It is time for African leaders to stop sucking up to the West. Donald Trump is a blessing. I see Donald Trump as a blessing because he's here to tell African leaders that there is no longer any free meal. There is no free lunch. Guys, go and work. Go and harness your natural resources and then make money from it. You understand? He doesn't want to exploit Africa. He's not saying he wants to exploit Africa. He's saying, I'm no longer giving funding. I want the money to stay within, and which is something that anybody can, is like, I have money. I want to live it within my family. I'm not saying I can't help people, but when helping you begins to be a problem to me, I'd rather just keep the money to myself rather than giving it to you. Look at the amount of money that the Biden administration signed to Ukraine. Billions of dollars given out by the Biden administration to fund the war in Ukraine. To what advantage is it to the US citizen? I'm not a US citizen, but I can understand what Donald Trump is talking about, even though I know that deep down, Donald Trump has another issue with South Africa, which brings me to BRICS. Because South Africa is the only African country that has made so much noise about BRICS. So much noise. Now, in the concluding part of Cyril Ramaphosa's tweet, he said the US remains a key strategic political and trade partner for South Africa. So you know that the US is a key strategic partner, but you want to join BRICS. Donald Trump knows what he's doing. He's a master negotiator. I mean, I'm watching this guy from The Apprentice. All seasons of The Apprentice, I watched it. I understand how this guy, to a certain level, because I'm not him, but I understand what he's trying to do. He's trying to bring South Africa to a point where they negotiate and then America is at an advantage. That's what he's trying to do. That is what he's trying to do. And I'm thinking that South Africa will fall for that trap because they are in a position of weakness. Just imagine what happened a few days ago when Donald Trump pulled aid funding. And African countries were crying. African leaders were crying. Uhuru Kenyatta even said something about it and was like, what did they expect? This is somebody who wants to keep funding within his country. He pulled the resources for aid funding, and then African countries were wailing, like practically wailing. You see that African countries with all the natural resources, you cannot even create antiretroviral drugs, common antiretroviral drugs. You know, if you create them, antiretroviral drugs, common antiretroviral drugs. Now, if you create antiretroviral drugs, there's something fundamentally wrong there. And this is not me complaining. This is me saying that finally, Africa has a chance to be free. The Sahel Alliance, that's Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. They have done, go and look at what those guys are doing. But I think Niger is the first country, I read it somewhere, I think it was on Twitter, whether they've been able to cure whether it's blind fever, be blind, there's something blind that they were able to cure. And they've eradicated it in Niger. Look at what's happening in Mali. Look at what's happening in Burkina Faso. Look at what those guys are doing because they have broken ties with the French. So they are running their things. They're using their own natural resources to build themselves. Donald Trump is saying, African countries, go and develop yourself. No more free ticket, no more free meal. Una dey crap. Why you cry? So personally, I'm waiting to see how the negotiation between South Africa and the United States will go. Probably the United States will tell South Africa to leave BRICS. I don't know. It depends on the extent that Donald Trump is willing to go with South Africa, because that man, if he starts, he just gives you back to back. As you're hitting him, he's hitting you back. Well, look at what happened in his first term with the trade wars between him and China, between the US and China. As China give and he give China. As China give and he give China. And the thing about it is that he's not even seeking a second term. So, it's even more dangerous for somebody who doesn't care about a second term. It's more dangerous. I'm telling you for a fact. So hopefully, I hope that South Africa actually thinks this negotiations through, because what Donald Trump wants is simply negotiation. He wants to put America at an advantage, right? So I hope that Cyril Ramaphosa will do the wise thing. He should go and meet with those cabinet members, so that, because when they pull the funding from South Africa, and South Africa never ready, because with their high level of corruption, I don't think that how can a country be so blessed and still be collecting aid? How can you have so much talent, so much wisdom in you as a person, and you still be begging? This, hey God, guys, I beg.